In today's video, we have a lot of news and rumors to discuss, including the latest trade talk around teams like the Ottawa Senators, the Seattle Kraken, the Anaheim Ducks, including Trevor Zegras getting called out by his coach. And we're also going to take a look at the Detroit Red Wings. We have some more playoff updates as well. The final wildcard spot in the East keeps changing here, and it could change again before the day is out. We're going to take a quick look at that wildcard race. We also have a fine from player safety for Evander Kane, big signing in Carolina, and news from the waiver wire. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot to cover here today. Let's start with Washington Capitals, of course, playing the Ottawa Senators. Game's underway here already. By the time this hits YouTube, the game will be probably 2/3 done or thereabouts. But John Carlsson being honored today before the game. Of course, he played game number 1,000 a few days back, and he's being honored at their home game here today. So congratulations, John Carlsson, on a really solid run here with the Capitals. 1,000 games, lots of success, including a 2018 Stanley Cup. So obviously that Capitals team, they're finally getting some more of their younger players into having some more pivotal roles. But they do have a lot of players there like Carlsson, and many others that have been there a long time and had a lot of success here together. So congrats on 1,000 games for Carlsson. As I said before, the wildcard race in the East for wildcard spot number 2 is getting very, very interesting. Every day things are changing. Wildcard spot 1 is pretty well locked up. Looks to be Tampa that's going to be settled into that spot nicely. I'm not sure. I guess it's mathematically possible that they could catch the Leafs, and they do play each other here again coming up, but I'm not so sure that it's really going to boil down to that. I really think the Leafs are more than likely going to stay in third. The Lightning are probably going to stay where they're at. I just don't see them catching Toronto, but it is possible. However, that number 2 spot is pretty wide open, and you've got teams like the Capitals, the Islanders, the Penguins, and the Red Wings all kind of in the mix there. You can't rule out the Flyers either, who have been free-falling out of the standings. They've fallen out of 3rd spot in the Metro, down to the wild card, and then out. So right now we're looking like the Islanders might be able to nail down that 3rd spot, but they've got some games to go. Detroit beat Buffalo earlier today in our early matinee 3-1. So for now, they've leapfrogged back into that spot. If the Capitals pull off a win against Ottawa tonight, then they will be back in there as well. The Penguins have been charging lately, so at least we have a little bit of an interesting race there for that final spot. But I must say that some of the teams that didn't quite meet expectations this year, like Ottawa, like Buffalo, major missed opportunity. That final wildcard spot is not going to have the number of points that I really thought it would going into the season. Normally, if you look at what it takes to get in, at least 94, 95, 96 points, it's most likely going to be a fair bit lower than that. And that's really unfortunate for those teams. If you look at last year, a team like Buffalo, I think they finished right around, I think it was 90 points. Ottawa had like 86. If they could have even just taken small steps forward and just a couple of more wins, they could be right in that conversation, getting themselves into the playoffs like we're seeing with Detroit, although Detroit is not a sure thing yet, but at least they're right there in the mix. And it could have been even more interesting. But instead, both those teams have taken a decent step back, and we're curious to see how things move forward with those clubs. But at least we have an interesting wild card race there. In the West, it's not quite as interesting. There's still going to be some jockeying for position, but for the most part, we know right now Nashville and LA are pretty safe in those spots. Like I said before, we have a fine from player safety. Oilers forward Evander Kane has been fined $5,000, which is the maximum allowed according to the CBA for slashing. That event took place last night in the Battle of Alberta against Calgary Flames forward Dryden Hunt. So Kane is fined for that. The Dallas Stars had called up Maverick Bourque, and he got to play his first NHL game, but now he's being returned to the AHL. The St. Louis Blues today are not confirming the exact extent, but Jake Neighbors was injured in last night's game, was not able to return. Does look like he's going to miss time. Obviously with the Blues pretty well being eliminated for the most part here. I don't think they really, mathematically they may not be out yet, but they're not going to be able to get back in. So it can certainly take their time with that injury. In Ottawa today, Timmy Stützle missing his 2nd straight game as well with a sore shoulder. He's listed as day-to-day. I assume he'll likely get back in and play a few games here before the end of the season for the Sens, but he's out. Dominic Kubalik also out today. We saw Zach McEwen draw back in after a lengthy absence due to injury. Mikko Rantanen with the Avalanche, he's out for a little bit. We don't know how long. He's listed as day-to-day, but Coach Bednar did confirm that he's in concussion protocol, but he was able to do some skating and working out, and there's been no reports of setbacks or anything, so I assume by the sounds of things it won't be too long, but he will be out a little bit, and I want to be cautious with that to make sure that he's good to go for the playoffs. And in New Jersey, there was a situation with Curtis Lazar when they played the Sens, which was just yesterday, that he left the game, and I didn't really see what happened. I mean, I was watching that game closely, so I don't really know whatever it wasn't like a real obvious play, a big hit or anything that I noticed, but he did leave the game. He was not able to return, and now they're saying that he could be done for the season. So I'm not sure if there was something he was already battling with, trying to play through and get aggravated, or what happened exactly, but Lazar in New Jersey might be done for the year. Big signing in Carolina, which was a little bit surprising, to be honest. They've signed their 2023 first-round pick, Bradley Nadeau, who was taken 30th overall. He gets his 3-year ELC. He was, of course, playing in the NCAA for the University of Maine. Put up 46 points in 37 games this year. He was definitely a bit of a late bloomer for sure. I believe it was not only barely about a year ago, he was playing I think he wasn't even playing major junior. He was playing junior A, then he got up and went to the University of Maine, got drafted. This kid has come a long ways in the last, probably 12 to 15 months in his development. So Carolina is obviously quite pleased with how far he's come in a short time. As much as he's one of their top 3 or 4 prospects, I really thought he'd spend another year playing college hockey, but he's signed, sealed, and delivered for the Carolina Hurricanes. They've been pretty good at picking these late first rounders, or even second rounders, and having them get to the NHL a lot sooner than you'd expect and contributing. Like Seth Jarvis is a prime example of that. He made the team a lot sooner than many people thought, and he's contributed and been able to find a role for himself ever since. So be curious to see how quickly Nadeau gets into some action here, and how this is going to work. But it will burn a year off his ELC if he plays this year, because it is effective right away. So obviously we'll see what the Carolina Hurricanes intend to do here, but good top prospect under a contract, which is always a good thing in that sense, but surprising that he's pulled out of college hockey so early. From the waiver wire as well, yesterday the Columbus Blue Jackets had Carson Meyer on waivers. He did clear, so he can be assigned to the minor leagues without any other conditions being met. So it's probably the last of waiver activity we'll see for a little while, I would suspect here. I'm surprised to see him on waivers, because you don't normally see that this time of year. Big update in the Canadian Hockey League as well for Major Junior Hockey. The CHL has lifted its ban on Russian and Belarusian players being brought into the import draft. So when they have their import draft this year, which is not coming up, they will be able to include those players from Belarus and from Russia. So that ban has now been lifted. So that's good in a sense. I mean, like we said before, I understand why these countries' players have had a lot of sanctions and everything placed against them, but at the same time, I'm conflicted, because I know it's not necessarily these players. It's not their fault that there's things going on politically, or war-wise. They didn't necessarily ask for this, and of course, and you also don't know where they stand politically, and I don't know that we need to. I mean, in all honesty, there's Russian players in the NHL that support Putin. They're still playing NHL hockey. It's really no different. It's just, I feel like some of these kids are being punished, because of things that their country leaders are doing. And really, at the end of the day, do I really care where they stand politically? Not really. I mean, there's difference of opinions all around the world, all kinds of different people. You're not going to agree with everybody. This is about sports. Just let them play. And at the end of the day, it'll be. So obviously they've kind of, I think in this situation of, come to a better conclusion, but we'll see what happens as far as other bans. I mean, I do understand when it comes to overseas tournaments and things like that, with those countries participating, that's a different issue than this, in my opinion. So we'll see. I'm not sure where the IHF, when we'll see changes at that level. That could be some time yet, probably at least another year before that gets reviewed, and we'll see where things are at that time. But, competing as a country and having these players compete for their club teams or trying to, pursue their careers, to me, that's a completely different issues. Now, as I mentioned in the rumor front, all kinds of things to take a look at. I want to take a look at Trevor Zegras. We know that he's been a name that's been in the rumor mill a lot, really dating back for almost near the end of last summer, when they were having a hard time coming to contract terms between the Ducks and his agent and himself. Like there was some speculation then that maybe it wouldn't end with a contract signing, maybe it would end with a trade, and it never happened. They did come to terms on a short-term deal, but really, it's been a tough season for Zegras all around. And he's recently called out by Coach Cronin there in Anaheim, and essentially saying that, I'll go through kind of parts of his quotes here from his media availability. He says that essentially that, he's a well-liked kid. Fans love him. The league loves him. He's on the cover of the NHL game. Very sociable kid. Talks to everyone around the locker room like a butterfly floating around. Just, very, very likable and social in that sense. So he's like, ultimately when you draw that much attention to yourself, you need to take that and turn it into some leadership. So trying to be, great on the ice each and every shift, leading by example. But if you sabotage that by taking foolish penalties, turning the puck over constantly, then you have to own up to that. Essentially kind of talking about, that he's had conversations with Zegras about essentially, owning that and how he plays and, trying to take all that good stuff that he does bring and channeling into being a more complete, better player. And as I've said before, that's why I honestly thought that there was going to end up with a more likelihood of that we do see a trade here. Is I don't think it's a case of Pat Verbeek or Coach Cronin not liking Zegras, but I don't think they're necessarily fans of everything. And I think they'd like to see him to add another element to his game. And I'm not sure that he wants to, because you're not seeing the response and to really make those changes. At least it doesn't seem that way to me. Maybe I'm wrong. But, all in all, over time, when they're trying to push this player to be, like, you want him to be that different, then, he's eventually going to be like, they don't like me for what I am, and maybe it doesn't work out. It's hard to say. But I understand why there's been so many rumors about this player, given where the team seems to feel about him. They want a lot of change. Like I said, they've got some other players that do play a completely different style, whether it's McTavish, Carlsson, and some of the defense guys coming up here, and they look at Zegras and they're like, they want more of that out of him. The Ducks, I think, really want to be a really tough team to play against. If you look at the style of player that Pat Verbeek was when he played, in the way Cronin coaches, I really don't know that they want all that fancy stuff mixed in. And if you're going to do all that fancy plays and you're going to be all that, like I said, drawing all that attention to yourself, then they want to see, being a 200-foot player to go along with it. They want to see it more for what they would refer to as the right reasons. So I think there's a conflict there between player, his personality, how he plays, and what the organization wants. So I really do think that this summer, I would not be one bit shocked whatsoever if we do see a significant trade, maybe around the draft, with Trevor Zegras. Like I said, it's been one thing after another, getting called out like that for your coach. I don't know. It just seemed like it might not be a fit there anymore, but that's my opinion on him. In Detroit, of course, they're drumming ahead here, trying to get into the playoffs, but one move that they are expected to look into address here in the offseason is goaltending, given that they've carried three goaltenders most of the year here with Husso, Lyon, and Reimer. Ville Husso really hasn't been the starter that they were hoping for. Since he's come over from St. Louis, he hasn't given the results that consistently that they were really wanting. They were, the way he is signed, what he's getting paid to be their starter, and he really hasn't been. Alex Lyon has taken the net from him. We've seen James Reimer even play important games too. Of course, they're both older. Lyon's still in his early 30s, so I still think he's got lots of game left, and he's kind of found his NHL, legs, if you will, at a later age, of course, after doing a lot of time in the minors and kind of going up and down a lot. But I do wonder if Detroit could look to move Husso next year, move him in the offseason. They got Sebastian Costa coming up. I don't know that he's ready yet. I think he could probably still benefit from another year in the minor leagues, or at the very least maybe being the number 3 guy where he's mostly in the minors, but he comes up, a little bit of NHL experience, but not full time. I think that could be a good year for him to kind of balance that out. And I'm not sure, do they bring Reimer back for another year? Maybe, or do they bring in another veteran on a 1-year deal to play with Lyon? But to me, I'd run with Lyon being the starter. He seems to be the most consistent, but Reimer's been decent for them too. I know Husso's a little younger than them, but he's not super young. He was, like I said, well into his 20s before he got a good opportunity with St. Louis to put up those numbers before he got the contract and get the trade to Detroit. So I don't know. Detroit certainly, to me, we'll see how they do here, if they get in the playoffs or not. They've taken some steps forward. They do have some holes in that team, especially in the back end, and they need to address. And I wonder, though, if moving Husso might be a way that they try to do that. And also frees up some money. It kind of changes the goaltending dynamic a little bit. You don't really want to carry 3 goalies, so I do wonder what his future holds there. Same goes in Seattle. The Kraken are another team to look for some fairly significant change. I don't think we're going to see as significant change in Detroit, but some change for sure to continue taking steps forward. In Seattle, though, they've taken a major step back, and it's believed Ron Francis is contemplating a coaching change and changes within the roster, focusing more on the younger players. We've seen Shane Wright come up from the minors here late in the year, and he's done really, really well, given an opportunity to play a top 6 role. I think they need to give their guys like Beniers and Wright and some of these other younger players more of an offensive role consistently next year to really let them grow. It might be another year of growing pains before they start taking steps forward again, but last year to me was a bit of an anomaly. I know it was nice to see the Kraken get into the playoffs in year 2, but they just had everything go right for them. They had so many different players hitting career highs. Just looking at all the stats, to me, I knew that was going to be really, really, really tough to duplicate and continue doing. Goaltender Philip Grubauer hasn't really worked out for them either since he signed when they first started. Joey Decord has taken over that net. He's been a real nice, piece for them to continue growing and developing. Speaking of younger players, again, another guy, he's not super young because he was, put in his time in college, got to Ottawa, I think he was 23 or something like that. They got him in the expansion draft, so he'd be was obviously more like the mid-20s now, but obviously Decord can be the goalie of the future there. I really believe that. And Grubauer, to me, for what he's getting paid, still has time on his contract. I'm not sure how they're going to move him, but he hasn't have a save percentage of .900 or better during his 3 years as a Kraken. He came from the Avalanche where, he was putting up way better numbers. And the Avalanche tried to keep him and couldn't do it. They let him go. They signed Darcy Kuemper. They won a Stanley Cup. They brought in Georgiev. As we can tell with the Avalanche, they've proven that you don't even need elite level goaltending to win a cup or to be a serious threat. You just need to average or a bit above average. If the rest of your team in front of them are that good, then they'll take care of it. So the Kraken, you definitely want to see them make changes, focus on younger players. Wouldn't be surprising to see a few veterans between the blue line and the forward group get moved out, but Grubauer really comes to mind. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to move that contract, but it's certainly a name to kind of watch as potential move. The other thing, too, is Seattle, for a team that's fairly young in its infancy for its history, they still have given out way too many either modified or full no trade clauses too, so they will have some trickiness to get around there as well. In Ottawa too, I know yesterday in the last couple of days here we've talked about some of the other names that we might see move, whether it's Korpisalo, which is going to be tough to do given the contract. The Sens going to move Shabbat or Chikrin. But another name that doesn't get enough attention, too, is Anton Forsberg. I know Bruce Garriock brought him up in last night's game, again, talking about how the goaltending tandem definitely has to change. This is probably the worst goaltending that the Senators have had since I don't know when. It might maybe going back to their early franchise days, but really ever since Craig Anderson left the Senators near the end of his career, goaltending has been incredibly unstable. And Forsberg had his moments of being good when he first got there. He was kind of thrust into more of a backup role, but then as he's had to take on more and more, he can't handle it. He had a big injury last year. I do wonder if that's played a role. I know the team defense in front of him hasn't been great, but Korpisalo and Forsberg have been absolutely atrocious. 21 times this year, I think, or was it today's game against the Capitals, is either the 21st or 22nd time that they've allowed the first goal on either the first or second shot. Every time, in the first, anywhere from first minute to the first 5 minutes, 1 or 2 shots, bam, goal. And it's happened 4 straight games on the streak, and like 21 or 22 times on the season. Like, it's absolutely brutal. And I understand, like I said, the team defense has to be responsible for part of that too. But you need your goaltender to come up big for you, and every once in a while make a save on a shot that you don't expect them to save. That's the difference that other teams sometimes that are having more success will get. Their goaltender will bail them out on an unbelievable play. The Sens don't get that, hardly ever. And that is a huge, huge problem. So if it's possible for them to do, I have no doubt that they will end up trying to move Korpisalo and Forsberg both. Forsberg will be much easier. He's got only 1 year left on his contract, whereas Korpisalo's got like 4. It's no wonder we've seen Steve Staios announce yesterday that their 2 main pro scouts are not returning. They've done a horrible job at identifying other pro talent for the Sens to target via trade, via UFA, in some case waivers. Like Forsberg was a waiver claim who came in during a critical time and had a good run. But then he got paid, and the trick and the hard part about being a pro is being consistent. And obviously, he struggled with that. And Korpisalo, like I said before, I was okay with him signing Korpisalo. I could understand based on what was available why they went down that road. But why you give a guy a 5-year contract when he really, to me, had never proven enough at the NHL to get more than maybe a couple of years at most? Like, it was horrible. And, that's a combination of their pro scouting and former GM Pierre Dorion. Pierre made some good moves, but he made some horrible ones too. And now Staios has to undo a lot of what was done. It's going to take time. The Sens might take another step back before they take a step forward. It's difficult to say. It's going to be real interesting and a real busy offseason, and they may not be able to address everything in one summer. It's really hard to say. So we'll be curious to see where everything goes, but let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.